Have you ever stood in a crowded room and felt utterly alone? Have you ever stared at the ceiling in the dead of night, the silence of your home deafened by the roar of your own thoughts? We live in a world of constant noise, a symphony of notifications, deadlines, and demands. It is a world that pulls us in 1,000 different directions, leaving our spirits stretched thin, our souls weary. We are taught to look for answers in spreadsheets, in bank accounts, in the approval of others. We are taught to trust only what our five senses can verify. But what if the most profound truths, the most powerful reassurances, are not meant for our eyes or our ears? What if they are whispers meant only for the heart? The journey you are on, the very act of you listening to these words right now, is not an accident. It is not a product of a random algorithm or a chance click. Consider this moment, a gentle knock on the door of your awareness. It is an invitation to look beyond the veil of the ordinary, to recognize that you are part of a story far grander and more mysterious than you can imagine. It is a sign that your invisible guides, your guardian angels, are reaching out, reminding you that you are seen, you are known, and you are never, ever walking this path alone. Let me tell you about Daniel. To the outside world, Daniel was the picture of success. He had a growing business, a beautiful family, a home in a quiet, tree-lined suburb. But behind the closed doors of his life, a storm was raging. A series of bad investments had left his company teetering on the brink of collapse. The pressure was a physical weight on his shoulders, a constant tightness in his chest. His laughter had become a hollow echo. His nights were sleepless, and the distance between him and his family was growing wider with every silent, worry-filled dinner. One Tuesday evening, the storm broke. A major client pulled out, a final, devastating blow. Daniel sat alone in his office long after his employees had gone home. The city outside glittered with 1,000,000 indifferent lights, each one a life moving forward while his own seemed to be grinding to a halt. The air was stale with the scent of cold coffee and defeat. He stared at a mountain of paperwork, the red ink of overdue notices screaming at him like open wounds. He felt a profound, crushing despair, a loneliness so complete it felt like the universe had forgotten his name. He buried his face in his hands, not praying, not even thinking, just breaking. And then it happened. It did not come with a sound or a flash of light. It was more subtle and infinitely more powerful, a stillness. It began in the corners of the room, hushing the hum of the old fluorescent light above him. The frantic rhythm of his own heart began to slow, each beat becoming deliberate, calm. The crushing weight on his chest did not simply vanish. It was gently lifted, as if by unseen hands. A wave of peace, so pure and so profound, it defied all logic, washed over him. It was a peace that had no business being in that room, no reason to exist amidst the wreckage of his ambitions. Yet, it was undeniably real. It was a warmth that seeped into his bones, a quiet strength that filled the hollow spaces inside him. He lifted his head, his eyes scanning the empty office. The terrifying stack of bills was still there. The threatening emails were still in his inbox. The problems had not disappeared, but the fear was gone. In its place was a certainty, a deep, unshakable knowing that everything somehow was going to be all right. It was a peace that, as the Apostle Paul wrote in his letter to the Philippians, transcends all understanding. This was the very peace that Paul promised would guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. It wasn't the absence of a storm. It was the calm at the very center of it. It was a divine anchor in a turbulent sea. This is the first and most powerful sign that an angel is near, an inexplicable, overwhelming sense of calm. It is the gentle touch of an angel's wing upon your soul. The great mystic Teresa of Avila described such divine encounters as leaving a mark as gentle as silk, as if an angel had brushed its wing against your heart. This is precisely what Daniel felt. He was not alone in that sterile, lonely office. In his moment of greatest despair, a heavenly protector had drawn near, wrapping him in a mantle of divine tranquility. This sacred peace is a direct manifestation of God's presence, delivered by his holy messengers. It reminds us of the promise in Psalm 91, where the psalmist declares, "He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge." Daniel, in that moment, found that refuge. He was being covered, protected, and reassured not by a change in his circumstances, but by a change in his spirit, orchestrated by a loving presence he could not see. The Holy Scripture affirms this truth time and again. The angels are not distant, mythical beings confined to ancient texts. They are, as it is written in Hebrews 1:14, ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation. They are active agents of God's love, sent to guide, protect, and comfort us. The peace Daniel experienced was the calling card of his guardian angel, a first, gentle whisper to remind him that he was not forgotten. He was a beloved child of God, and heaven itself was fighting for him. So, I ask you to reflect. Have you ever felt this? A sudden calm in the middle of chaos, a wave of peace during a moment of intense grief or fear. Do not dismiss it as a psychological trick or a simple mood swing. Recognize it for what it is, a sacred visitation. It is the first sign that your angelic guides are with you, laying a foundation of peace upon which they can build a path of hope and restoration in your life. This is where the miracles begin, not in the parting of seas, but in the calming of a single troubled heart. This is the first beautiful mystery, and it is only the beginning. The peace that had settled upon Daniel in his darkest hour was not a fleeting emotion. He left his office that night, not with a solution, but with something far more valuable, a renewed spirit. The mountain of debt was still there, the threat of failure still loomed, but the terror that had paralyzed him was gone, replaced by a strange, quiet resolve. He drove home under a canopy of silent stars, feeling as though he had been given a shield he could not see, a strength that was not his own. But faith, especially when newly found, is a fragile thing. The harsh light of morning often brings with it the return of old fears. As Daniel sat at his kitchen table the next day, the morning sun illuminating the worry lines on his face, doubt began to creep back in. Was that peace real, or was it simply a moment of emotional exhaustion, a mirage in a desert of despair? The world of logic and reason, the world he had always trusted, told him it was a fantasy. He retreated to his home office, a room that had become another cell of anxiety. He sat at his desk, ready to once again face the grim reality of his finances, but his eyes were drawn to something out of place. There, resting in the center of his otherwise clear mahogany desk, was a single, impossibly white feather. It was perfect, not a speck of dust or dirt on it, soft, delicate, and utterly pristine. His breath caught in his throat. The windows were closed. No birds had been in the house. His children were at school. There was no logical explanation for its presence. He reached out a trembling hand and touched it. It was real. It was tangible proof. It was the physical echo of the peace he had felt the night before. This, my friends, is the second sign. When the angels know that our hearts need more than a feeling, they send us a physical token, a tangible message. And there is no clearer message than a white feather. In ancient traditions and across cultures, the feather symbolizes the connection between the earthly realm and the heavens, a bridge between our world and the spirit world. It is a symbol of truth, of purity, and of flight. Finding one in an unexpected, unexplainable place is a direct and personal communication. It is a letter from heaven, sealed by a divine hand, with a simple, powerful message. We are here. We heard you. We are with you. The author of Hebrews reminds us that angels are ministering spirits sent to serve. That small feather on Daniel's desk was an act of service, a profound ministry to his wavering soul. It was a reminder that the veil between worlds is thinner than we think. Think of the patriarch Jacob in the book of Genesis. As he fled for his life, he lay down to sleep with a stone for a pillow and had a powerful dream. He saw a great stairway, a ladder reaching from the earth all the way to heaven, with the angels of God ascending and descending upon it. That ladder symbolized the constant, active connection between God and humanity. The feather you find on your path, on your pillow, or on your desk is like a single, perfect rung from that celestial ladder placed in your hands to remind you that the connection is real and that heavenly help is always moving between worlds on your behalf. Daniel picked up the feather, its lightness a stark contrast to the heaviness in his heart. He closed his fingers around it, and the peace from the night before flooded back, stronger this time, fortified by this small, miraculous gift. He knew with a certainty that defied all doubt that he was not fighting this battle alone. With this newfound assurance, Daniel began to change. For the first time in years, he felt the pull to pray, not out of desperation, but out of a burgeoning sense of gratitude and connection. That evening, long after his family was asleep, he went not to his office, but to the quiet living room. He didn't kneel or recite formal prayers. He simply sat in the darkness and spoke from his heart, sharing his fears, his hopes, and his gratitude for the signs he had been shown. As he sat there in the stillness, his eyes barely adjusted to the dim light filtering in from the street, he saw it. At first, it was just a flicker in his peripheral vision. He dismissed it. A trick of the light, a reflection from a passing car. But then he saw it again and again. Tiny, sparkling pinpricks of golden light, like dust motes dancing in a sunbeam that wasn't there. They swirled gently in the air before him, appearing and disappearing in silent, joyful bursts. He wasn't afraid. A deep sense of awe washed over him. The air grew thick with a presence that was both powerful and gentle. He was witnessing the third sign, unexplained flashes of light. In the Bible, light is almost always synonymous with a divine or angelic presence. When the Apostle Peter was imprisoned, chained between two soldiers in the deepest part of the dungeon, Acts chapter 12 tells us that an angel of the Lord appeared and a light shone in the cell. That light was not just for illumination, it was the very instrument of liberation. It was the glory of God piercing the darkness of a human prison, and at its appearance, chains fell away. Similarly, when the angels appeared to the shepherds in the fields to announce the birth of Jesus, the Gospel of Luke says, "The glory of the Lord shone around them." The light was a manifestation of God's holy presence, a signal that heaven was breaking through into earth's story in a powerful way. What Daniel saw was a personal version of that same glory. Spiritual teachers and mystics believe that angels are beings of pure energy, existing at a much higher frequency than our physical world. They are, in essence, beings of light. What we perceive as a flash, an orb, or a sparkle is our physical senses catching a momentary glimpse of their true form, their light body, as they move through our dimension. It is a ripple in our reality, caused by their proximity. Each spark of light Daniel saw was a confirmation, a silent, "Yes, we are here. Yes, we are listening." It was an angelic presence making itself known, not to overwhelm him, but to comfort and reassure him. He was being shown a glimpse of the glorious reality that exists just beyond our normal sight, the reality where legions of angels stand ready to assist, the peace that calmed his soul, the feather that grounded his faith, and now the light that filled him with awe. This was a conversation. Heaven was not shouting, it was whispering, speaking a language of gentle signs and profound symbols. And Daniel, for the first time in his life, was learning how to listen. The language of the angels, however, is not spoken only through sight. It is a symphony that engages all the senses, waiting to be perceived by a heart that is open and willing to believe. The experience in the living room left Daniel changed. The man who had once found security in balance sheets and market projections was now finding it in feathers and flashes of light. It was a profound shift, a recalibration of his soul. He began to move through his days, not with the frantic energy of a man trying to control his destiny, but with the quiet watchfulness of a man learning to trust a divine one. He started to pay attention not just to the big, dramatic events, but to the subtle currents of energy that flowed through his life and his home. And that's when he noticed the fourth sign. It began subtly. One afternoon, he was in his home office, the sun warming the room through the window. It was a comfortable, even temperature. Suddenly, a distinct chill swept over him. It wasn't the draft from an open window. It was a localized, palpable drop in temperature that raised the hairs on his arms. It lasted only for a moment, a cool, clean presence that felt strangely sacred. It was as if someone had opened a door to a cool, high mountain sanctuary right there in his room. Days later, the opposite occurred. He was in the garage, a typically cool and drafty space, feeling a familiar pang of anxiety as he looked at his car, a symbol of the life he was afraid of losing. As a wave of despair threatened to pull him under, a sudden enveloping warmth wrapped around him. It was like stepping into a beam of sunlight, except there was no sun. It was a comforting, gentle heat that seemed to emanate from the air itself, melting the icy grip of fear around his heart. Daniel was experiencing the fourth powerful sign of an angelic presence, sudden and inexplicable changes in temperature. Our world is governed by the laws of thermodynamics, but the spirit world operates on a different set of principles. When a celestial being, an angel, draws near, their immense energy interacts with our environment. This can cause the air molecules around them to either speed up, creating heat, or slow down, creating a chill. Think of the prophet Elijah's profound experience on Mount Horeb. He was seeking a sign from God, and he first witnessed a mighty wind, then an earthquake, and then a fire. But the Bible tells us that the Lord was not in any of them. After the fire, there came a gentle whisper, or, as some translations say, a still small voice. God's presence was in the most subtle phenomenon. This teaches us that divine signs are not always dramatic. A sudden chill is not just a cold spot. It can be an angelic presence, purifying the atmosphere, creating a pocket of holy ground around you. The warmth is not just a heat fluctuation. It can be a direct impartation of comfort, the spiritual equivalent of a divine embrace. To recognize these signs, context is everything. Daniel noticed that the chill often came when he was feeling overwhelmed and distracted, as if to say, "Be still, pay attention." The warmth always came in moments of deep sadness or fear, a direct answer to his heart's cry for comfort. He was learning that his home was not just a structure of wood and brick, it was becoming a sanctuary, a place where the atmosphere itself was charged with a protective, loving energy. This growing sensitivity led him to the fifth, and perhaps most beautifully mysterious sign. One evening, his wife, Sarah, was sitting with him. The stress of their situation had created a chasm between them, filled with unspoken fears. The silence was heavy. Daniel closed his eyes and sent up a silent prayer, not for money or a solution, but for connection, for a bridge to be rebuilt between him and the woman he loved. As he opened his eyes, he smelled it, a fragrance. It was the rich, sweet scent of roses, so vivid and real, he almost expected to see a bouquet on the table. But there were no flowers in the house. The windows were closed. The scent didn't drift in from outside. It simply manifested in the air around them. It was a celestial aroma, a perfume with no earthly source. Sarah looked at him, her eyes wide. "Do you smell that?" she whispered. He nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. He was not imagining it. She smelled it too. The heavy silence between them broke, not with words, but with a shared sense of wonder. The scent lingered for a minute, a beautiful, fragrant blessing, and in its wake, the tension that had filled the room for months simply dissolved. For the first time in a long time, they began to truly talk. This is the fifth sign, a sweet, unexplainable fragrance. In the Bible, scents and aromas carry deep spiritual significance. In the book of Exodus, God gives Moses precise instructions for creating a sacred incense, a holy perfume whose scent was directly associated with God's presence in the tabernacle. In the New Testament, in Revelation, the prayers of the saints are described as rising up to God's throne like the smoke of incense from a golden censer. A sweet, heavenly fragrance appearing out of nowhere is a powerful sign that your prayers are being heard and that a holy presence is near. It is, quite literally, the fragrance of heaven. Mystics and saints throughout history have reported this phenomenon. The great Saint Thérèse of Lisieux was known as the Little Flower, and after her death, many who prayed for her intercession reported the inexplicable scent of roses as a sign that their prayers were answered. What Daniel and Sarah experienced was the breath of heaven in their living room. The scent was a message of love, a sign that the angels were ministering not only to his financial fears but also to the wounds in his marriage. It was a holy balm applied to their relationship, bringing healing and reconciliation where there had been only distance and pain. The peace, the feather, the light, the temperature changes, and now the scent Daniel was being tutored in a new reality. He was learning that God's messengers were not abstract figures in a stained glass window. They were real, present, and deeply involved in the intricate details of his life, speaking a language of love that transcended words and touched every one of his senses. He was beginning to understand that he was part of a divine collaboration, and the next sign would show him just how intricately the angels were weaving the threads of his life together. The series of signs had profoundly transformed Daniel's perspective. He was no longer a man drowning in a sea of problems, but a student of divine mysteries, learning to see the hand of God in the small sacred details of his life. This new awareness opened him up to the sixth sign, which is perhaps the most intellectually and spiritually astonishing of all: synchronicity. He began to notice a pattern of meaningful coincidences, a divine choreography playing out in his daily life. One morning, feeling lost about his next business move, he prayed for a sign, for any kind of direction. Later that day, he went to a small used bookstore, a place he hadn't visited in years. As he browsed the dusty shelves, a book quite literally fell at his feet. The title was The Resilient Entrepreneur. He opened it to a random page, and his eyes landed on a sentence that spoke directly to his situation, offering a strategy so clear and perfect, it felt like it had been written just for him. Another time, he was worrying about a specific debt owed to a man named Mr. Harrison, a man he hadn't spoken to in over a year. Just as the anxiety peaked, his phone rang. The caller ID read, Michael Harrison. It was the man's son, calling out of the blue to say his father had been thinking of Daniel and wanted to propose a new, more manageable payment plan. These were not random events. This was synchronicity, the language of the universe conspiring in his favor. The great psychologist Carl Jung, who coined the term, described it as a causal connecting principle, where the inner world of thought and the outer world of events align in a way that defies mere probability. It is the work of angels behind the scenes, master weavers creating a beautiful tapestry out of the tangled threads of our lives. They are arranging meetings, planting thoughts, and guiding steps to ensure that the right people, the right resources, and the right opportunities appear at precisely the right moment. Think of the story of Esther in the Bible. The fate of an entire nation rested on a series of incredible coincidences. The king couldn't sleep one night, so he called for the royal chronicles to be read. The random passage that was chosen just happened to be the one detailing how Mordecai had saved his life. This single synchronistic event set in motion a chain reaction that led to the salvation of the Jewish people. This is how heaven works. Not always through thunder and lightning, but often through the quiet, perfect alignment of seemingly unrelated events. Daniel was seeing this divine alignment in his own life. He was learning that his angels were not just offering comfort, they were actively orchestrating his comeback, answering his prayers not with a single miracle, but with 1,000 tiny ones. This journey of discovery culminated in the seventh and most intimate sign of all, a dream. For weeks, Daniel's dreams had been fraught with anxiety, falling, being chased, endless hallways with no doors. But one night, that changed. He dreamt he was standing in a vast, empty field under a night sky, filled with more stars than he had ever seen. He felt a familiar sense of peace, the same peace that had visited him in his office. Then, a figure appeared before him. It was tall and luminous, its form indistinct, but radiating an overwhelming love and strength. It was an angel. It didn't speak in words, but a message flowed directly into Daniel's mind, a feeling of profound reassurance and a clear vision of a path forward. The angel smiled, a gesture that filled Daniel with a joy so intense, it felt like his soul was being bathed in sunlight. It then handed him a single, simple key before fading into the light. Daniel woke up, his heart pounding not with fear, but with exhilaration. The dream was more real than his waking life. This was the final sign, a direct visitation in a dream. Dreams are the gateway, the sacred portal where the veil between worlds is at its thinnest. As the mystic tradition of Kabbalah teaches, when we sleep, our soul can journey to higher realms and bring back divine messages. Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus, was a man guided almost entirely by angelic dreams. An angel appeared in a dream to tell him not to be afraid to take Mary as his wife. An angel appeared in a dream to warn him to flee to Egypt. An angel appeared in a dream to tell him when it was safe to return. These were not mere fantasies, they were divine directives, crucial communications that protected the Messiah and fulfilled God's plan. The key the angel gave Daniel in his dream was a sacred symbol, a spiritual password. It represented the solution he had been seeking. And the next morning, sitting with a newfound clarity, he finally understood what he had to do. The idea for a new business venture, one that utilized his skills in a completely new way, came to him fully formed, as if unlocked by the angel's key. So, why don't angels simply appear before us in broad daylight? Why the subtle signs, the whispers, the dreams? Because they honor our free will. If a 9-foot-tall, glorious being of light appeared in your living room, belief would no longer be a choice. It would be a compulsion. Faith is a journey of the heart, not a reaction to overwhelming evidence. The signs are gentle invitations, designed to be recognized by a soul that is seeking, a heart that is open. They empower us to be co-creators in our own story of faith. Daniel's story did not end with all his problems vanishing overnight, but his journey had given him something more important than wealth. It had given him an unshakable faith. He knew he was part of a cosmic partnership, guided by loving, powerful beings. And so, I leave you with this. You are never alone. The whispers of peace, the feathers on your path, the lights in the darkness, the sacred scents, the perfect coincidences, and the dreams that touch your soul, these are not your imagination. They are real. They are the language of your angels. As one wise soul said, angels are not a belief, they are a reality. Just because you cannot see the wind does not mean it isn't blowing. Open your heart, listen, look, for the signs are all around you, and a world of wonder is waiting to be discovered. You are loved, you are guided, and you are eternally watched over. Believe it.